Morning, everybody. Ashley, how are you? Edmonton, good to see. There's one of you there waving at you, Edmonton. Can you hear us, Edmonton?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Good to see you guys today. The shelter staff are not eating donuts this week. That's nice to see. So we have a couple of announcements. I got to get this before I lose it on my phone. So Richard's going to come and he's going to talk to us about Zurich Lunch and Learn first.
Is that Drew back there? Hello, Edmonton. Hello, Red Deer. Make this really quick. Tomorrow afternoon, please come for a lunch, a free lunch. The lunch is free, but even better than that, we've got the president from Zurich, Canada, coming to speak to us. You probably saw it in the email. What I want to say is David is going to be talking about customer service best practices, and he has been with Zurich for over 20 years. He knows what great practices. The reason why is that we've been on the receiving end of some of those best practices for customer service with them, and you will not want to miss it. It's going to be well worth your time, our time, as we head into Christmas. So please join us tomorrow. Starts at 11:30. There's a lunch. 12 o'clock prompt. We're going to get going. Thank you.
Now, just a question, Richard. If people haven't RSVP'd already, what do they do? Because I know we saw a second email yesterday. Okay. Okay. So if you didn't RSVP yesterday, try to get it done this morning, and we'll be good. We got something very special this morning. Christina's going to come up and model our new staff outfits for us. There was a whole lot of research went into this. They interviewed a number of people, clearly not me, and this is what they came up with.
The Christmas party is nearing. Why the silver and gold I am wearing? The Christmas committee will let you in on this wee secret to begin. All that glitters is not gold. Gold may shine, but it has no true light. Every cloud has a silver lining. Not all treasure is silver and gold, mate. Don't gain the world and lose your soul. Wisdom is better than silver and gold. These wise words will give you a taste of the theme on which our party is based. Stay tuned for another clue about the mustard seed Christmas do.
So those outfits come in all sizes. They're on the website. You can pay for one if you really want to. Where is my buddy Brittany? Just because there's some different things going on in this room, she's going to tell you what's been going on in this room this week.
All right. So some of you may have seen some smaller than average for the mustard seed humans walking around this week. So we have a bunch of grade 6 students from Sunnyside School that are here doing seed school with us. They arrived Monday morning, and they will be here with us every day through Friday. And just kind of a quick update on some of the great conversations that we're having. We're talking a lot about what is human connection, and one of the highlights from yesterday that students were still talking about today was getting to hear from a resident and learning some of their stories. And my kind of favorite quote from a student was just a grade 6 student put up his hand after hearing our resident's story and just said, I was so honored by that story, and let me tell you a little bit about how that connected with me. And it actually created opportunities for some of these students to share about some of the things with each other that they've experienced that they didn't know that there were things going on kind of in their own family lives and outside of school lives. So we're having great discussions, great conversations, and feel free to pop in and say hi if you're coming by the common room and want to just check out what we're doing.
Okay. I don't see, Kaylee's not here right now because I think she's off picking up a check that I couldn't go pick up, so that's awesome. But they had, just a reminder, if you can help us out with the turkey ham jam on December 2nd, I've sort of put the gears to all my main leadership guys and going, I expect everybody out there at least doing the 4 hours that day. I think everybody can give 4 hours that day. So if you can help, great. If you don't think you can help, come see me. We'll talk about it and we'll figure out a way so you can help. It is a great deal of fun. It really is. I look forward to it every year, so you can help out. That's great. Next week's speaker is Pastor Vin Doan, and he pastors a small outreach church here in Calgary, and so we're looking forward to him. And this week's speaker, backed by popular demand, is the amazing Andrew. otherwise known as Drew. You have to give him a round of applause if he's not moving.
Okay. That's my intro music. Is that good? Okay, perfect. I had to. So I'm all about making this thing a little better. So I thought, we all need intro music. How's Edmonton doing today? Woo! How's the shelter doing today? Is that Bertha and Matt? A few other people I know. Fantastic. You guys are doing good today too? Doing real good? Okay. Yes. So another way to make this a little better is for all the noobs out there, I'm going to introduce myself. Because sometimes I'm watching this happening and I'm like, who is that person exactly? Like, I know who you are, but I don't know who you are. Maybe I'm not connected to you in your flow. So my name is Drew. I manage the volunteer department here. I started volunteering here in 2010, playing music for the guests at lunch downtown. Started here seasonally in 2011 in donor relations, of all places. Yeah. And then I worked as an employment coach for a little while, and then I left the organization and came back in the current role that I'm in early 2014. Anywho, so that's who I am. Guys, so this is like real talk with Drew right now, okay? I'm super excited to share some information with you guys and hopefully convert you to a whole new way of thinking and understanding your work here and your life in Calgary and maybe the world in general. So, like, all cards on the table. I'm hoping that after today, you're all feeling inspired and excited to embark on a world with a new, fresh mentality, a new worldview, if you will. That's why I'm here. I'm like trying to create converts, okay? So bear with me. Cards are on the table. I've basically waited a few years to kind of share this with you guys, though I have shared some of this with my team over the last few years, and I've shared this with Steve, the CEO, a bunch as well, because I've got to convert him before anybody else in the organization. But it's funny that last week we had the announcement that we did the Best Christian Workplace, and we scored so well on that. Good job, everybody. And job satisfaction was one of the areas that probably still needed some help or some improvement. And believe it or not, what I'm saying today is a little bit on your job satisfaction and why you work at the Mustard Seed, and sharing some of the reasons why I work here. So studies show that public speakers who are remembered are ones that often get the crowd involved in what they're doing. So I want you all to remember what's happening today, so I'm going to get you all involved with some group participation. So what I want you to do is turn to the person beside you or behind you, get up in twos, and for about like 30 seconds to a minute, discuss. You guys have to do this in Edmonton and Shelter as well. Don't think you're excluded from this. Get with a partner, and not in necessarily importance, not in like a hierarchy per se, but talk to each other about one of the three reasons why you work at the Mustard Seed. Before you do this, it could be seriously a paycheck. Like, let's be completely honest with each other. It could be a paycheck. It could be because of God. It could be because of the guests. Whatever. Like, throw it out there. I don't know what the three reasons are going to be for any. There could be some unique reasons. So just share with each other in the next 30 seconds to a minute about your three reasons, and then we'll go forward from there. So give it. Let's get that intro music again. Okay, I think we're good. Is everyone feeling good about that? Let's wrap up those conversations here, everybody. Okay. So now, who wants to just throw out one of the reasons you heard, either your own or someone that shared with you, if it feels appropriate to share. Just throw it out there, people. Let's one at a time. Let's just hear it. Let's hear some reasons. Why do people work at the Mustard Seed? Paycheck. Someone said paycheck. Faith-based organization. The team. Cool. People work here because they enjoy working with certain people. Close to our house. That's a good one. Because people can change. Or you want to change people. Or both, maybe. I want to change everybody. People can change. So that's a good one. That's a very empathetic reason to work here. What else? Come on, people. Diversity. Okay. We've heard some any other bizarre or kind of unique reasons why people work here. Partnerships that we form with others. Feel valued. People feel valued working here. Opportunity to change perspectives. That's a good one. That's kind of unique. Anything else? Great benefits. We do have good benefits, especially once you start having kids. I realize that. People are always like, oh, our benefits are great. It's like, but then you start having kids, you're like, yeah, man, these are sweet benefits. So, anyone else? Anything that was unique or kind of, wow, I didn't realize people worked here for that reason? Persons. Okay. Yeah, conduit for people to do God's work in the community. Fantastic. Those are all great reasons. So, my top reasons why I work here are, and if you've worked with me or around me, you might know these things because I promote these often throughout team meetings and all the rest of it. But just a few for me, just because I got the microphone, I'm going to talk about myself just for a second. So my top reason why I work here is and I shared this the last time I spoke at Faith Connect, and it's just I feel like I can be all that I can be at the Mustard Seed. And I've, without going in too much into it, I think that the U.S. Army has the best work slogan in the world. It says, be all you can be. They don't say, come and work here because we got the biggest guns, you'll kill the most people, you'll do the most whatever, right? They don't say that. They say, come be all you can be. And I know I would quit at the Mustard Seed if I ever felt like I was held back from being my true potential. So what is Drew's true potential? Is it getting 100 million volunteers through the door? Not necessarily. For me, it's about being, in a compassionate place of work, faith-based organization, all those different things that the Mustard Seed will allow me to grow in as a human and to achieve those things in my life. A couple other reasons. Honestly, guys, I work here for the paycheck. Let's be completely honest. Got bills to pay. You know what I mean? And my wife works for WestJet as a flight attendant, and so we have this really cool flow of working for top Canadian companies. That's pretty cool, and so Mustard Seed and WestJet are both recognized as pretty rad places to work, and even on an ego level, that's kind of neat. So whatever. That's another reason probably why I work here. There's many, but one of the main reasons I work here, everybody, and one of the main reasons I chose to come here after leaving the organization for about a year and a half, there's one specific reason why I did that, and it's maybe some of the reasons why you guys are here. I've heard people like Margaret, for example, say that this is one of the reasons why she works here, and this reason is voluntary simplicity. How many of you heard this reason why you work here by show of hands in sharing with each other? Did anyone say I work here because of voluntary simplicity? Because it's a humble sort of workplace. No one said that? Perfect. So I'm going to convert you all to put this on your top 3 list, okay? So when did I learn about voluntary simplicity? For me, it was when I was actually in college. So quick brief history of Drew in school. I started college actually at Briarcrest Bible College. Richard, what's up? Briarcrest boys. Anyway, started out there. Took 4 years off to play music professionally, both in a touring band for 2 years, and then for 2 years, and then 2 years beyond that at a church, leading worship. And then during that time, that was in Winnipeg. So I kind of finished my schooling. I did 3 years and 2 years at Prov and at Red River there in Winnipeg. And so during that time, Providence, if anyone knows about it, is kind of off in the country a little bit. It's a small, little, kind of random, out in the middle of nowhere. It's really sweet though. And everyone there kind of gets in this kind of simplistic lifestyle while they're out there. Obviously, students living on campus, there's literally nothing going around, so you have to be okay with just the little campus life that's happening there, or traveling about 45 minutes to Winnipeg to engage in whatever you want to do there. But the idea is that voluntary simplicity was very engaged by all the staff and sometimes the students in that place. And so they used to host on weekends, they did about 4 a year, give or take, where they would host these seminars where speakers and different people would come in and speak about So it was like 2 days. It was a Saturday, Sunday, where people from all these different organizations would come and host and speak, and then they'd have like panels, and they would review it. And if you went, you'd get marks on like a paper from a class or whatever. It was like bonus points basically for attending and showing interest and writing these little reports. So one weekend they had an entire day kind of specifically for this idea of voluntary simplicity. And it was during that day that it was a very interesting and heated conversation that erupted around all these like voluntary simplicity kind of things that were happening, and these ideas that were shared off the pulpit, if you will. And one of them, for example, was how do we help people in poverty, like in different parts of the year? How do we help people in our own communities? And then finally, someone had a session. It was an hour-long session on a book called Voluntary Simplicity by Dwayne Elgin. And this is a book that I own. Who did I give it to? Jeremiah, did I give that to you? I gave it to someone here. I don't know who I gave it to. I've always owned this book, and then I pass it on to someone after reading it like every 2 or 3 years since watching this presentation. And so the idea was someone did kind of like an open book review on this book, and then the panel reviewed it, and the students were commenting on what they learned and all these different things. And people got really angry about this book called Voluntary Simplicity, because the book challenges us to kind of voluntarily simplify our lives. And in our current world, that can be a bit of that challenges our materialistic and other ways of thinking at times. Not for everyone, maybe not for you guys, but for other people in the real world. So it was a really interesting seminar and conversation that happened with a panel and everything else. And then from that point on, I ended up buying the book and ended up meeting with a bunch of my professors to just simply talk about voluntary simplicity and what that meant. And I realized after coming to a place like Calgary and realizing I wanted to live and work in community, that voluntary simplicity started to become way more important for me as a person that I was. So back in 2012-ish, I was basically headhunted by a good friend of mine who is a really wealthy business owner in the city here, and he asked me to do marketing and business development for him and his company. And back then, they were right over there in the Flamenco building, and it was an amazing work opportunity that had I stayed there, I would have been making way more than I would here. And we grew the company from being really small, 5, 6 employees, to about 20 in about a year that I was there. And we ended up moving offices to the Northeast, and even since now, that company's like blown up. I got my best friend a job there. So the idea was that, leaving the Mustard Seed, coming here, moving here in 2010, starting volunteering here, doing other things here, working my way into an organization like this, then leaving for a for-profit with an amazing boss, great ethic, great product, all those things. Something in me just didn't click for that. I was like, I've experienced now what it means to be in community, having like a voluntary, simplistic mentality, and now I'm experiencing something else. This isn't working for me, so I end up coming back to the volunteer manager role here. And so part of that journey for me is really one of the primary reasons why I'm here. So that's what has really like impacted me to choose to work in this workplace, and to now reevaluate my life, how I can kind of stay in that flow. And so what are parts of voluntary simplicity that I love? Like, we could go into the book, and I could talk all about the book and what Dwayne says about it, or I just highly recommend you guys buy it and read through it, or find out whoever has it here in the organization, because I gave it to someone, and get it from them. And anyways, but there are parts about voluntary simplicity that I love. So the primary thing about voluntary simplicity is that it's conscious intentionality, right? In our society today, in greater society, through the media and through just kind of the flow we get into as humans, it's all about materialism to a point, right? Like, let's face it, guys, we live in a capitalistic world. We live in a world where things are created, you buy those things, and the world progresses through in every way because of that, like community, technology, all the rest of it, religion even. So there's these like, let's keep the industry moving forward, let's keep life moving forward on the earth as we know it, in most cases, and then let's buy into this system, if you will. It's not like that in every area of the world. Obviously, there are entire communities built around, other meaningful ways to experience life and all the rest of it. But for the most part, especially where we live, that's kind of the system. So in that system, sometimes we get caught up without really thinking. We find ourselves on a life path that isn't fully like a conscious decision at times. How many of you, by show of hands, have felt like you're just kind of doing something just for the sake of doing it? Has anyone done that? Or you've made major life decisions that are just like, I watch my parents do this, I watch my friends do it, now I'm just going to do that. You know what I mean? And so I find myself doing that a lot, especially in my youth and as a young adult. It was just sort of like, what's the next thing I need to do? I guess I need to do this. Let's do it. You know that scene in like Fight Club, right? When like Tyler is talking to the other guy and he's having the bath, and it's just like, what do you do now? Talking to his dad. Does anyone remember that scene? Anyways, perfect example. So the idea is, with voluntary simplicity comes a very meaningful, mindful attempt to life. Before we even simplify, the voluntary part of that whole equation is I'm going to identify places in my life where I can kind of be a little more intentional and conscious about my decisions. And I love that. There's a few more things there. The materialistic approach, actually, so dumbing down our materialistic possessions and not buying into that like corporate scandal of the West. I love that. I'm kind of like an anti-establishment type person. My dad's a doctor, but he was always like kind of like a punk to the system in so many different ways. So I was kind of raised that way in some ways. So the tattoos, the punk, hip hop culture, all that kind of stuff. I just found myself in that flow. So I love the idea of like maybe going against the flow a little bit. Maybe that's just who I am. I don't know. There's also this whole concept, and it's mentioned in the book, about like relational simplicity. And Ashley, I remember you saying after we read the book as a team, one of her favorite parts was Dwayne talks about how like these having compassionate eyes. And there's this whole section of the chapter where he talks about what does it mean to like sit around a table or sit in a relationship and like look at someone with like compassionate, like simplistic eyes. And the whole thought behind that was, how do we just stop and realize where we are in this relationship and just have a moment with our eyes, like physically, just to look and see each other. That simplicity, that relational simplicity. Like it's not about like, just stopping basically and like dumbing your relationships right down to like the core essence of why you value each other. What would that look like if people in our society did that? And it's like a really beautiful thing when you stop to think like, yeah, if I were to just to stop, let's say I'm going to meet a friend at the pub and it's like, what did you do today? What are you looking forward to doing tomorrow? What are you doing then? Like just to kind of stop all of that and sit and realize like, who are we as people? And why do we appreciate each other? Let's get into kind of the deeper things. And that coming through like even something as simple as the gaze. How am I looking at you and understanding you? So he goes into stuff about that in the book. And then of course there's like religious simplicity as well, like compassionate living. There's like Buddhists and Christians in different ways, and many different, and even Muslims and other different religious expressions have shown that, just slowing down your life, creating times to pray and meditate and all these different things are actually engaging in a life of voluntary simplicity, right? Jesus running off to the mountain to pray, to reconnect with God and do all those things. That was a life of voluntary simplicity. And of course, throughout the New Testament, there's all sorts of examples of how God is kind of inviting us to live voluntarily simple, and to engage in these kind of ways of life. So a really cool example of voluntary simplicity in the book is when he talks about voluntary simplicity versus poverty. And this is one thing I wanted to bring up because this is kind of what challenges people when they first start thinking of this, is what do you mean, why should I voluntarily simplify? I don't feel like I can do that, or I don't want to do that. So he gives an example of two people riding a bike. The first guy riding a bike can't afford a car. He has to ride a bike. He's trying to get to work, and he's hating life right now. He's just thinking as the cars are driving by him, I wish I could afford one of those cars so I could get to work in like 5 minutes instead of 25 minutes. And all he wishes for is for the car. He's in poverty. Now there's another guy riding beside him who owned the car, who's getting to work in 5 minutes, but who would rather choose to get physical exercise, have time to think in the morning, wake up, have his day, be a little more conscious about what he's doing, kind of planning things out to better himself on his way to work. So that's the guy choosing voluntary simplicity. So there's actually a theory in the book that Dwayne presents, and he says, perhaps, and they don't really land on this for sure, but perhaps we need to attain more to actually simplify, to be okay with what we don't have now. And so I would want to present that to you guys. If what I'm saying to you really irks you, it could be like a level of evolution or Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever. Maybe we haven't got to the point where we can realize, wait a second, I don't want this. I can now do away with it. Maybe you're still in the flow where you need to obtain and then to realize this is what I have now, so I'm okay letting this go. Because if we don't have it yet, then we're simply just like, oh, okay, whatever. So the idea for me was when I moved to Calgary, coming from Prov and coming from Winnipeg, which is a little more standard living city, a little more of a granola flow in that city in general, I had these hopes to live voluntarily simply. But I know it was kind of like hopes and dreams. I didn't know what it meant to actually have something and then voluntarily give it away. I probably didn't know that until I came into this role, leaving that other workplace that I had. Where I knew I was going to be making more, having different impact in that company, different impact on maybe society in general, and just what that looked like for my life. So for me to like engage in the mustard seed and to have this experience now and to actually have and let go, it kind of takes on a whole new meaning, right? We can all do that in various different ways. Like, let's say you just got way too many pairs of shoes, you just simplify your shoe closet, like whatever. But maybe in a more macro sense, it takes a level of attaining first. So guys, why is this important to us now as Mustard Seed staff? Because believe it or not, whether or not you're consciously doing it, you are all involved in a voluntarily simplistic life. Just working here brings some of these mentalities and ideas into your brain, whether or not you're even thinking about it. Fundamentally, working for a religious organization like ours, you're already engaging in voluntary simplicity based on like the religious flows we get into, the moments of pausing for prayer, all these different things. That's inundating a life of simplicity in your life, whether you know it or like it or not. You're all probably making at least 20% less than someone else. Unless, like, our entry-level roles, maybe, I don't know what the budget or anything, but some of us are making significantly less in the role we're choosing to do, right? So that's voluntary simplicity, right? We work for a not-for-profit, come on, people. Like, we're not on an aggressive raise or bonus strategy like other companies are. The last place I was at, my bonuses were like double my paycheck, which was amazing. It'll never happen here at the Mustard Seed, and I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, that's just the way it works, right? So we're all consciously choosing that. We know that perhaps we go off and work somewhere else and make more money, but we're okay working here for those other reasons we actually expressed a little earlier on, and that's okay. So whether you want it or like it or not, you're living voluntarily simplicity. And if not yourself, in relation to people around you. A couple other reasons why it's important for us here is, yeah, that whole compassionate flow. We all value taking a second to, like, let's say Richard's like, Drew, we really need to have a meeting. He's like, Steve and John, everyone's going to be there, and Bill's going to be there too, your boss, so you better show up. If I'm walking across the street, one of the residents stops me and really wants to talk, I would take that time to talk with them, just to at least hear them and understand them, and then maybe like reconnect, right? But even taking that 2 to 5 minutes just to have that moment, engaging in simplicity, having that stop, pause moment in my life, and then to show up to that meeting being like, sorry guys, I got caught up, I'm sorry I'm 5 minutes late, they wouldn't care. Like, those values promoted by our organization are really cool, and they actually have huge ties to voluntary simplicity. So I think that's why it's important for us. And I think, like, in a more conscious and intentional way, that's why I wanted to bring this to the table today and promote this to you guys. How can we engage in this? Not corporately, but individually for yourselves. How can you walk into this meeting and take this away and live this life? So, yes, so what now? What do we do? It's 10:26, we gotta wrap this up. I would invite you guys to start to, you could Google it, like there's a lot on YouTube about like nowness and consciousness and living voluntarily simplistic and all that. Like TED Talks has at least half a dozen different talks on this, which are all really rad. Dwayne Elgin is the name of the guy, and the book is actually called Voluntary Simplicity. You could buy it off of Amazon for about like $5. And it's a really good read. He literally doesn't promote anything until the last chapter. What he did was, starting in the 70s, he wrote for a magazine, and he just took ideas from everyone else based on the articles in the magazine and got everyone else's ideas about voluntary simplicity and presents those in the book. So it's a very like non-threatening, easy read about just what other people have said or changed their lives in a voluntary way. Again, our team has read it. We've read it twice. I read it with, back when we had some turnover, we read it with that initial team, and then we read it with the current team now. It's a good read in a group setting because a lot of people get fired up and get angry at the book for some reason, and it's awesome. And then, and then I gave it to Steve, and I've given it to other people to read because I think, like, no matter where you are in your life, as a North American right now, you need to read this. And there's other reasons why, right? Like, arguably the Earth could get overpopulated. Arguably some resources could exhaust in the time that we're on here. Arguably our children might be set up for some sort of like colossal worldwide failure. I don't know. There are things happening, global warming, all the rest of it. That like maybe as humans right now on the Earth, we need to be a little more conscious of it. And maybe if everyone did their part to simplify a little more, maybe the whole world would be a better place. I don't know. Who knows if that's really what's happening. But the idea is, you choose. You look at that and you decide and you realize, hey, I'm here at the Mustard Seed. Is what Drew is saying is true? Like, what now? What if? And then what now? So I invite you guys to do a little more research. Take the ideas I planted in your brain. Let them grow a little bit. Or throw them out. They'll come back. And, yeah, that's basically it. So that's my presentation for today. And that's Voluntary Simplicity, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. What's the time? It is 10:28. And we're done. So have a blessed day, and see you later, everybody.